Hi, I'm Tony Howard-Arias. I am one of the co-creators and the lead writer on Slay the Princess. And
Oh,
passing it over to Meredith.
I'm Meredith Gran, and I'm the lead developer on Perfect Tides and the sequel, Perfect Tides Station to Station, which I'm currently working on.
Both of these are fantastic games, and if you have not played them yet, you should buy the first Perfect Tides and then play the demo for the second.
Thank you, Tony. And I will throw that one right back at you and say Slay the Princess is excellent as well. We wouldn't be here having this conversation if both of these things weren't true.
Yeah, exactly. So you're making a sequel to your game. What drove you to sequel land?
The madness of having my game seen and played. Like I got the idea for the sequel like the day that the game was released and that feedback was starting to come in. It was the moment where I realized like, okay, game dev was a very good idea for me, and also I cannot stop now. I need to have more of this because I have never gotten this kind of reaction from a comic before. It is just, it is possible to communicate, to have such a conversation with a person who plays your game, that I just, I just need to know what else I can do in that regard. You know, it seems that the possibilities are endless right now.
It's a little bit of a black hole once you put something out there and like the masses start consuming it, and there's just 50,000 different places you can check 24/7 to see what people are saying. It's very hard to remove yourself from that pit.
It
So like,
is.
was there anything in particular that sparked
Um,
the sequel, or was it just wanting to continue working in that space?
I mean, there was definitely like that reaction, but then I think like I remember a conversation I had with my husband, Mike, where we were just like, we were talking about like various ages that, you know, you can be and that you might remember. And he was saying something about like 18, man, now that's an age. And like, it was kind of like the first time I thought about what was distinctive about 18. Like uh, how much you've been given the freedom to like move within the adult world, but how everything hits harder than it ever has. So I think Perfect Tides, which was kind of from the vantage point of a 15, 16-year old who wanted to experience the world. I was like, well, this is the game where I write about some of those things that she wanted to experience and how that actually looks, which I think is, it's just more of everything. It's more intense. It's more heartbreaking. It's more exciting. It's just more. 18 is a lot. So the more I thought about being 18, the more I remembered and the more I realized like, I have to tell this. Like this needs to be a story too. So I felt very certain about that. Right from the beginning there, and much of what I came up with at that time is still the story of the game, now 2 years later.
That is super cool. When is that one done? Is
Oh
that
my god.
soon? Distant future?
I think like I just got to the point where I can play the whole game and understand it, and I can kind of give it to another person and guide them through the entire thing. So it's very ugly, but every scene has been staged basically, and you know, a very linear like no real choices version of it is playable at this point. So I am almost ready to move into the the polish stage. Like there's a lot of like there's a lot of work I need to do on the game aspect of it. Itself, the mechanics of the game, all of the branching outcomes. But the shape of it is like locked now. There's no more expanding. Like it just up until very recently, it was like this ever expanding thing, and recently it is now a shape, and I'm just filling that shape now. So I think that by the end of this year, I'm going to be giving it out for testing. I think that's about where I'm at. I'm
That
crossing
is
my fingers.
so interesting because it's like the opposite of the approach that we do for our things, where like with Scarlet Hollow episodes, we finish a scene at a time. Like Abby writes the first draft of those and we have a rough outline, but in terms of like putting it all together, we do like a scene or a set of scenes, you know, chronologically from start to end. We hand that over to testers. We do the next one. We hand it over to the point where it's like, we're really, really bad about deadlines. And for the past several episode releases, we'll like have set a release date because people like to hear when things are coming out and we need like to name a date. Otherwise, we'll just keep working on it forever. But it's like every single time it's been a scramble of like, all right, we have 2 weeks left. At like that 2 week mark, here's 3/4 of it, and then generally it's been like 3 days before the episode is due to come out that we hand like the whole thing over to people, and at that point it's like there's no real room for expansion anymore. There's only bug tests.
Oh,
and
wow.
Sometimes we go back and expand things.
You only test it just a few days before it comes out?
For a lot of it, yeah. Like, there is a staging to it. So it's like for episode 4, I think we started the testing process like months in advance, but it would be, here's the first 2 scenes of the episode. We send those out to our testers. We're thorough about it. Once that seems to be cleared up, we move on. We do the next handful of scenes. We toss those over. But it has always been the case that like the climaxes of those episodes, which are the most crammed with not just content but easily breakable content, that those we only get out like a few days early. We really lean on... Someone wants to leave. 1 second. Oh, cat cam for everyone. Spoons, say...
Where are
Oh
you?
my god, I'm there.
Oh, yeah.
Spoons, Spoons, do you wanna say hi?
Absolutely not.
No, she doesn't. I'm just gonna let her free. There you go. This
If you want to get into the mind of a game developer, you have to understand how important things like this are. The way our pets keep us grounded.
Yeah, she is spoiled. She has this one like fluffy lavender bed that we bought her a year ago, and it's like she doesn't leave it, and when it occasionally has to go in the washing machine, she throws a little tantrum about how it's not there on her stack of 3 other pillows and a heating pad. So we bought her a second super fluffy bed of the same type so that we could rotate them with the laundry. But now they're both just out at all times, and she just jumps back and forth between them. Yeah, no, we're on the Scarlet Hollow side of things. We were very, very risk heavy in terms of testing, and we lean a lot into the early access side of things. There's so much branching in that game in particular, where there is no traditional way to QA it. So we have like a couple 100 alpha testers that we set up through like our Patreon, and then generally when we release something, even though there's like a crunch before that release, we're both working like 80 hours a week. I continue to work 80 hours a week fixing everything. And Slay the Princess was a bit more smooth. We were able to get that to testers a week before its release, which is still not a lot of time. And when we handed it off, there was a big question of, will a lot of the complex branching, especially as it feeds into the end game, actually work? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. And it thankfully did. But that was very stressful.
Oh my goodness. And that's fascinating. I mean, I did get the impression that there was sort of a serialized aspect to the way you release your games that I am sometimes envious of, because you know, as you probably remember from the webcomic days, it is it is very nice to get that feedback very often from people. I did consider, like, for Perfect Tides 1, I did play test chapter by chapter. I had 4 chapters, and I did send them out one at a time. And for this game, I did consider doing. I did consider releasing them in chapters. I had a week where I was just like, man, I could get something out this year if I did, and I considered it pretty strongly. But in the end, I decided that I couldn't bear the thought of locking myself into the writing choices that I was making in that first chapter, and I was worried that I would live to regret. Not having a little bit of extra time to live with those ideas.
Okay, so that's super interesting. So were you considering, like, each chapter being a standalone release, or like an early access thing where you updated it from time to time?
I think a standalone release, just because if I had to interact with the early access players on a daily basis, in addition to the main development, I think the game would just slip through my fingers. I do not have the 80-hour work week. Sometimes I would like to, but it is just not possible with the life that I have, and I feel like I need to wall myself off from these various aspects of game development pretty frequently just to stay on task. Even like marketing pushes, I spent, I went from like December to the end of January working on preparing a demo for MagFest, and then February preparing the demo for the internet. And by the time I was done with that, I was like, I have barely worked on my game, this year.
It's exhausting, and the 80-hour thing just like isn't sustainable. We're trying very, very hard to move away from that right now. Like, there's only so many hours in the day. Are you effectively like a one-woman operation for all of this?
So I have a few core people who are working on the game at least a couple days a week. Soren, who does the backgrounds, is working pretty much all the time on the environments. And then in terms of like music and other assets for the game, I have people who are basically working like on a part-time basis on those things. So at any given time, I'm paying the most attention, but thankfully I do have a little bit of help. It would be nice to be able to hand off a few more of these obligations, though.
Yeah, the marketing is killer in particular, because it's just, we're in a similar boat where it's the two of us full time, and then we have a small handful of people doing other work. Like the person who works the most other than us is probably Brandon, our composer, because we ask him for far too many tracks. I think the Slay the Princess soundtrack has like 60 pieces on it.
That's awesome.
And then like our voice actors, and we have a sound designer. We started working with like a PR firm for Slay the Princess, and that helped a lot with the marketing, but then there's still so much that falls on me in terms of like managing the community and
oh my goodness.
Putting emails together and all of these other things. But there was something else that you said that I thought was super interesting, which was one of the reasons you didn't do like a more episodic release was not wanting to feel like you'd committed to writing choices you made. And like, that's just something that we've never done. Like, games feel like such malleable products compared to pretty much any other piece of art, where at any given point of time we can just go in and change it if we feel like something isn't working, and we've done that a lot. I think that's been received with varying degrees of enthusiasm from folks. I think generally when we've done changes to Scarlet Hollow, it's just been expanding things or rewriting a scene that didn't feel like it landed the way we wanted it to land. Now with Slay the Princess in December, I went back and I trimmed a bunch of dialogue that felt like extraneous or repetitive, or just like, oh, these guys are just saying the same thing again and again and again, and it means nothing. And I think it makes the game worse. And some people got very, very protective of the cut lines. We wound up putting a couple of them back in, and then otherwise just letting them vent their feelings about it at the Steam discussion boards. But I think the thread is still up, and it has like 70 comments at this point of people arguing back and forth over, I think it was 50 lines of dialogue that were trimmed. And it's like, it's much harder to change things with Slay the Princess because we have voice acting in it. So it's like, if we make any changes that aren't cutting a line, it means we have to schedule a recording session with our voice actors. We have to record that dialogue. And there's a tricky thing too, where, because like Nicole does, I think once you factor in the expansion we have coming up, 24 voices in the game, and Johnny does 12, like this challenge with like, are you hitting the exact pitch and tone and energy that matches what this character was when you recorded her like 6 months ago?
Sure, they gotta get into it again.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I feel like it's kind of the same when it comes to writing, where I will, I've learned to iterate on things rather than just like trying to get them perfect and then moving on. And when I'm writing like a particular act of this game, and all of them are kind of like centering on different stories, I find that I have to kind of be there again. I have to put myself in that mode, and it really affects many aspects of my life, just kind of being in that mode. It's what I'm thinking about the most, and in a way sort of living, even though, it's this strange blend of memories and total fiction and, creating an aesthetic version of a memory. And it can, I feel like it makes me a little weird, but that I have to get a little weird about it in order to like fully be immersed in that work.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like, at least for me, that process feels like completely different between both of our games. I think part of that might just be like being in the lead writer shoes for Slay the Princess, where I have to make the overarching decisions, versus kind of being that more editor and second writer on Scarlet Hollow, where there's a lot of stuff in front of me. Like, I know Abby is some sort of I don't know if I have a word other than freak to describe her about this, but like, she's someone who can just sit down and write with no build-up, doesn't have to put herself in the right mindset, she just does it. Like, whenever our last deadline was done, we both took a few days off, and partway through her first day, she was just like, all right, I'm going to sit down and start writing fanfic now. And I think she cranked out like 10,000 words in a day or two for that. So
awesome.
I can't relate to that. But for Slay the Princess, it's like, for every single route, there's like a different mindset I have to be in. It permeates every aspect of my being for however many days it takes to write that. There's usually just like a single song that I have to play on loop to remain in that mindset for the whole period. I'm looking forward to not doing that for a while. That'd be great.
Right, putting yourself in that state of hypnosis. I mean, I completely see where Abby is coming from. I feel like as I've been a freelance artist for like so many years at this point, I have learned to keep office hours and kind of force the work to come when it needs to come. And like, I've had to double that since having a kid. And, if I sit down at my desk, like, if something doesn't get done, there's a problem. And I feel like I forget who said this, but I heard at one point a cartoonist say that you can't like wait for your muse to come to you. You have to like shoot it out of the sky. And I feel pretty strongly about that. Like, whatever it is I'm working on. Yes, there are periods where I have to just think about it and I have to like be with the idea, and then one day it all comes. But I have to get something down, and generally when I do that, something good will follow. Maybe not immediately, but the groundwork for it will lead to that eventually.
Yeah, like I think for me, a given route for Slay the Princess, it would be like 3 days of thinking and walking and meandering while trying to force something out and being frustrated with everything, and then it would click and fall into place, and then it would be like another 3 days to write that route. There is definitely a really tricky component of that in terms of like sizing up the workload and when it would be done, where it's like I kept wanting to look at it and being like, well, once I started writing, it took me 3 days, so it takes me 3 days to do one of these. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
absolutely not the case. I'm very happy with the clip we moved at for that game. I think for the release version, it was about 7 months of work for me, like 4 for Abby. The expansion is slower going, part because just like life has gotten really, really busy. I think that's like taking another few months for each of us, but yeah, very tired.
Oh man. Yeah, there are other parts of my life where I'm just like, man, I wish I had been working on a game then. I would have loved to see what I can come up with, but at the same time, like I feel like I really make every hour count at this point. So I never could have gotten such high quality hours out of another period in my life. So for that, I am grateful for like, the time that I actually get to sit down and work what I'm able to come up with.
And the work, in my humble opinion, is very, very good. So, like, clearly no time better than the present to work on it.
Thank you.
Something I thought would be neat to chat about was endings to games, especially games that have multiple endings. So I know in the first Perfect Tides, is there 2?
Yeah, there's like one that is like you can vary the text a little bit, but like the images are the same. And
Yeah.
then there's one that is no text. It's just the ending,
Yeah.
completely different images.
So, like, I think it's fair to say one of the endings in Perfect Tides is written to be much more cathartic and satisfying than the other, and you have to work for that one. And I think that this is also, at least to some extent, the case with Slay the Princess, where we have, I think there's like 6 endings in the game. One of them's really weird, and then you get to the final confrontation, and there's one where before getting to like the final scene, you accept an ending and leave. And I think there's something a little innately unsatisfying about that ending. I think I've seen some people disagree, but then it's like I also look at the achievement data, and it's like, well, that's the one that of people who finish the game, like 60 or 70% of them take. So I guess like for you as a creator, how do you feel about having these multiple endings, and also knowing that the one that would bring people the most satisfaction or catharsis, or that maybe you would find the most cathartic as a creator, is the one that the fewest number of your players see?
I mean, to me, that was kind of how the games that I loved most were made when I was younger. For example, King's Quest VI. I don't know if you ever played that one, but it's got a very hard to achieve, like multi-part good ending. Yeah. And if you don't get it, you just like everything can fall apart if you don't do the things that you need to do. And I guess in fairness to the modern player, they're not going to play one game multiple times over the course of months just to get every possibility anymore. But on the other hand, I did, releasing my game, I did find that players are much more curious and generous with their time than I could have imagined. And obviously, I've learned quite a bit about how to best use that curiosity and perhaps not, not make them feel like they're wasting their time. But I wanted this ending to be harder to achieve because it is kind of so grandiose that it's not really the ending that most of us got at the end of our 16th year. Like
It's
it's
a very good way of putting it. Yeah.
and I don't see the bad ending as necessarily bad, especially if you get like sort of the better version of the bad ending.
Sure.
I see it as like, I'm not going to, I'll try not to describe it, but to me, it's kind of like the good things about your life have been established, and what you didn't achieve this year is, something maybe next year you'll achieve. And maybe next year is living another year, or maybe it's playing the game again.
Yeah.
But I don't regret it too much. I mean, we're living in an age where people can work through these things with a guide very easily. They can
Me.
they can watch the video, yeah. And I don't feel like it's not something that I'm looking to repeat with the next game, but I feel that my goal to create kind of that 90s point and click Sierra game, complete with all the trappings of the genre, was a success. And I am certain that if I ever tried to change anything about how that ending is achieved, I would get just as much blowback or more than you experienced with rewriting a few lines in your game.
Sure. Yeah, and it's like, I do think that you're right that the good ending in Perfect Tides is like, it's such a byproduct of the labor that you have to put into it to earn. Where it's like, I've played through the game twice now. It is one of my favorites. But like I used the guide both times to find everything because I didn't want to miss any details. And it's like, in the context of all of that extra work and exploration that goes in, it's like I personally can't even imagine the game ending any other way, even though I've looked at the other ending on YouTube. And it was also very good, but left some pain in my heart to see. But yeah, like I know one of the things that we put a lot of effort into with Slay the Princess was like an idea of, well, you're sort of, the game is designed where you get out of it the things that you put into it. And it's like, if some of the earlier endings are things that you find satisfying or align with the way that you play, then that's the ending you get. I know we have a joke ending that's been in a joke ending. It's a real ending, but it's been in there since the first demo, where it's just like, if you follow the instructions you're given pretty much line by line and do exactly what you're told, the game ends in 10 minutes. You're successful. You get really, really detailed Procreate illustration that I did myself and did not want to keep in the full game, but like everyone who played the demo insisted it remain there. But like there's a number of people who will leave Steam reviews that are like 10-15 minutes long, where it's like, yeah, great experience, game's really short though. And it's like, you do you. If this is, you want to give
Man.
us,
Oh, that's
you
so
want to
great.
give us $18 and then play for 15 minutes to leave a mean review, that's totally fine.
Oh man,
There
that's so
are
great.
there are at the same time some players where it's like they do get that ending first, and then for whatever reason they don't realize that there's more to explore or worth exploring there. And they're not as happy, but they're also a small minority. I think it begs a question of just like, to what extent do we sort of push players in the direction we want them to go to get a full experience, versus like leave them to their own devices and let our game serve as a form of self-expression for them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I think about that a lot, especially because like I'm also writing a game now where there are assignments. You're trying to be a good student, and I just know that things like that are a test of like, are you going to be a good student or not? And I feel that I can't interfere with that. Similar to how, Slay the Princess can kind of encourage people like, I'm telling you what the assignment is. This is very straightforward.
Yeah.
Oh, but isn't she pretty? Don't you like her? And ultimately, you are going to form an emotional feeling about the princess that is going to inform how you play the game. Maybe, you'll play the game a few ways, with your curiosity will lead you in different directions. But the part that is you is going to dictate your choices. And I feel like I have kind of tried to anticipate the different ways that people will play my game, but I'm not really going to be able to know until it comes out or until, it's play tested by a bigger pool of people, just what people think they should do with like these questions about how to be a good student, how to be a good friend, how to be someone in a relationship that causes minimal pain. Like these are, I have a story written, but like I'd like to know, like, what do you think? What are you like? What do you remember yourself being like? What do you think she would do? And like those are all up to the player. So I think with what I do, like I have a story that I have written, I've prepared for you, and I'm assuring you this is the story that you want. The outcome is going to be what I've written, but along the way, you will be judged for the choices you make, and like they will matter to some extent. So,
Yeah.
like, who are you? What kind of person are you? I feel like it's good for the game to present choices like that.
Yeah, on that note, do you want to talk a little bit about the assignment system that you made for Station to Station? Because I thought it was so cool, and that it was a really, really interesting way of, like, weighting player choices where, like, there's actually a challenge towards making a decision with how you spend your time in a given day instead of just, like, this is the correct answer where I am a flawless, goody good person, and this is the miscreant direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean the assignments. I don't want to give too much away about how they will be graded, but the player certainly does not have to do all of the assignments, and they will be offered quite a few opportunities to do something other than the assignment. At the same time, if the player dutifully does all the assignments and does not attempt to live any other aspect of their life, then the assignments are going to be graded on a curve of a person who hasn't really done anything else. So your grades are going to suffer if all you do is write and work on them and try to be the good student. And on the other hand, your life is going to suffer if you don't do anything else, because there is potential in either direction to miss opportunities. So I think the player has to use their own judgment. Like, what kind of person do you want to emerge from college as? And if you're asking honestly, how many of those people are going to say, "I want excellent grades," and nothing else matters. So I've presented a lot of things like that, where like the good thing to do, the academically good thing to do, is always available to you, but you don't have to do it. And if you don't do it, maybe you'll do something else instead. I definitely, when I'm thinking about like gamifying these like aspects of our lives, I don't want to just gamify the academic aspect of it. There are so many things to do at 18 that are going to make you a good writer that don't involve sitting in front of a desk.
Right, yeah, and like the system mostly focuses on writing assignments, and like from the build I played, there's all of these different facets of your life that you can gain understanding of that you have to feed in combinations into these assignments. So it was like, if you didn't hang out with people, you would have a far less rich understanding of the world, which meant that even if you were doing things, you were writing things that were dull and not grounded in reality. And I don't know, I thought that was like the coolest thing when I saw it. I don't think I'd ever seen something have such an interesting representation of like what it's like to try and become a writer while you're in college. Anyways, it's super cool. Everyone who's watching this should download the demo right now and play it.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean that's the hope, you know. I think I've been met with a little bit of skepticism where people will say like, so like you're going to be collecting a lot of ideas and like leveling up a lot of those ideas, and they'll ask like variations of what I kind of see as a question of like, can this really be done? And you know, the truth is that like every outcome, like the the secret is that like there isn't really a lot of math behind the outcomes. There's only my ability to write believably what would happen if if you weighed this idea against this idea or this experience. So it's really it's on me to like write all of those outcomes in a way that meets function and makes people believe that like they are working within this system. So I feel like I have quite the quite the challenge ahead of me, but I feel pretty good about it at the moment.
Yeah, like again, I thought it was just like amazingly well executed. I loved that demo so much. Especially the accidental longer version that I got to play.
That's right, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I don't know. Fantastic. I'm so excited for this game.
Thank you.
Yeah, and like the thing you were saying about just like, I don't know, the looseness of the systems speaks really truly to like the writing process we have with our games. So it's like one of the things we do in Scarlet Hollow is when we started working on it, we were both very frustrated with just like the sort of, single axis linear relationship systems that are so common in games where you do the right things and then this person likes you more and then they divulge secrets and then you get more points, and don't even worry about doing the wrong things because you'll just look up a guide and cheat your way to a good relationship or save scum through it. So it's like what we did there is we set up, I think it was like 4 or 5 axes, and we compared values like from opposing axes to each other. So we have like one that's just like your agreeableness with a person, so how friendly you are on a surface level, which some people like, some people don't. There's like one for emotional closeness, so like if you're kind of emotionally closed off and you're very agreeable, a given character might think that you're being really phony. We have like some about like your reliability, but at the end of the day, the application of the system, the execution of it is just, well, when we have a line of dialogue, we think about the relationships a character might have with you, and we pull from the system to the best of our ability, and we balance it around player feedback. But like, there is so much more writing and I guess artistry that goes into that than just like the number crunching and the math end of it.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, like I think you and I do see it exactly the same way, where like you have these numbers and then you have to decide artistically what those numbers represent. And that's so much, I think that's so much more interesting to the player than like seeing their score written down. People have suggested that because I'm working with like all these different stats here, that like this game is a little bit more like an RPG than a point and click adventure. Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see that like once you start weighing everything by these numbers, you are going to like get a more desirable outcome if your score is better somewhere.
Yeah.
But But yeah, I mean, I definitely prefer to look at it as what does that number represent to me? Like, what approximation of that number can I make, and hide the system as much as possible in favor of you know, the writing that can come out of it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said about that. We in Scarlet Hollow we never display any relationship values. I have occasionally, sometimes, accidentally left my dev tools active in a build that's gone live to testers, and then they get really upset when I realize my mistake and patch it away. But like, one, I think that data just gets meaningless in the grand scheme of things. And two, it's like when you obfuscate it, it moves it away from something that can be gamed by your players and into a tool for you as a writer that you can use as you will. So, like, one of the things with the Scarlet Hollow system that we've done over time is, like, in the first handful of episodes, almost every single thing you can say or do affects your many axes with each character, like, by a pretty significant amount. Sometimes it's like, you know, only incrementing something by one, but like everything you do has an impact. And then it's a huge pain in the ass to code. And two, it's like by the time we got to the fourth episode, which is a little past the halfway point in the game, start to feel like, well, the opinions characters have of you at this point should be solidified. So what if we stopped making every single choice increment things, and we say that, like, no, you've made your first impression, your relationship is kind of set in stone now, barring major choices that would make someone question your character. What if we don't adjust it anymore? And it's like, because the values are completely hidden for us and a lot of people don't even know what the system is or how it works, we can do that, and we can retool it so it serves our writing purposes better, without, like, you know, getting in trouble with our players or without ruining the game.
Yes.
Of course, the fact that I'm saying this out loud on a stream that I assume some quantity of Scarlet Hollow players will watch means that they will get upset with us. But it's like I've always really liked the design philosophy or mentality of, like, you design a system to be functional for the purposes you want it to function in, and then as soon as it's no longer useful or productive there, you move on to the next thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I hear that. And, like, yeah, as long as we're divulging this, like, I have not actually scored any of the choices that I've written in this game yet. When it comes to dialogue, every conversation and every scene that you have, almost all of them involve some choice of, like, what to say, how to react to things. And I have not scored a single one of them because right now they seem important to me. They seem important to the story, but I don't actually know what their value in the mechanics of the game is yet. But I think it's more important that these are actual questions that are significant. They're either really funny that, like, you're being asked to make that choice, or it is actually like a question of morality, a question of judgment that the player will be like, oh, what do I think? Oh my God. And they'll actually, like, it'll actually give them pause and think about what they would do in this situation. So the scoring values will be determined at some point, and I'm sure there will be some adjustments made to make everything really play nicely. But I'm not very worried about that because I feel like the experience of playing this and, like, like you say, the desire to kind of, like, move people away from their instinct to game the system and, like, find the best outcome. I really want to kind of, like, move people away from that concern and just say, like, don't worry, you won't miss any story. I know I did that. I know I did that dick move with the ending last time, but, like, trust me, you're gonna play the full game. Just make the choices that you think you would make, and have the true experience of the game be the one that is yours.
Yeah, and like that experience is what matters at the end of the day, and it's one of the things that makes me really appreciate games as a medium for storytelling, where it's like specifically the fact that you can take your reader and involve them in the story and to make them feel the pressure of that story as they go through it means you can tell something completely different. You can make things hit harder in certain ways. They won't hit as hard in some other ways. Yeah, like I know the values in Scarlet Hollow changed a lot over time. Pretty much between every episode, we had to, with our testers, just like be like, send us your list of every decision you made and your save file, and let me see if these values feel appropriate to me, and we'll adjust them accordingly. It's wild the razor's edge we were able to successfully walk there, but I'm very happy about the execution. So I think the last patch I made to the relationship system was after we did a live stream where I tried to prove that, like, without using certain character traits, you could have a positive relationship with, like, these 3 characters at the same time, and I, like, just failed by 1 or 2 points, and I went back and changed it so that I would have succeeded.
Yeah, no, that's a good indicator that you need to, like, patch something up, is that, like, you played it and it didn't make sense to you.
Oh, it made sense. I was just trying to metagame with all of our knowledge, because part of it is there's, like, 2 characters in particular that are foils to each other in our story, to the point where, like, doing anything that gets you closer to one gets you more distant with the other, etc., etc. So, there was, like, a very, very fine line that I thought was possible to walk to, like, get effectively a maxed out score with both of them. And I was slightly off. It was a shame, because there was, like a couple characters where had, like, romance locks behind this, and this was end of a 12-hour stream, and the end of it is like, oh no, we can't romance anyone. It is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of acceptance, like releasing a game and just being like, the reaction that people have gotten from this is the reaction they got, and you can't relive that. And if they felt something strong from it, then the game was a success. To spend so many hours with something and not be like, God, this is just some dry, boring, time waster. To walk away from a game feeling like you read a novel and that, like, part of it is going to stay with you, in spite of any, of the many flaws that you can personally pick out at any given time. It's extremely special to have that effect on people.
Yeah, no, it's great. I wouldn't work in any other field if I were given the chance to have whatever job I wanted.
What else is there?
I picked this one. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Cool. I think we are nearing the time where we have to wrap things up and plug things. So
okay.
If you would like to go first.
Yeah, you can check out my game, Perfect Tides. It's on Steam and all that. If you want to read, like, news updates on me and find all my socials, you can just go to meredithgran.com. And I post, like, little bits of developer updates there, appearances, interviews, stuff like that.
And you can pick up both Scarlet Hollow and Slay the Princess on Steam and GOG. This is being broadcast on Steam, so you should pick them up on Steam. Scarlet Hollow is also in a bundle with Perfect Tides, so you can get both games for an additional stacking discount over whatever discounts are being run on them at the time. I always feel like I trip over myself explaining the stacking discount phenomenon to people, but it's really good. You should take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can also find us on Discord is one of the better places. Both of our games have subreddits. I continue to post on the platform formerly known as Twitter, because that's where the engagement still is. I would love to stop.
Yeah.
So follow us on Blue Sky, so I don't have to keep posting there. Cool. I think that was great. Is our secret hidden producer here and ready to cut us off? He is!